Hello. Welcome, everybody. First Monday in April here. Getting started with Midwife Monday. That's today. As people kind of hop on, feel free to say hello to me in the chat box. That's always so nice to see some familiar faces and maybe some new ones. And tell us where you're from and what question or topic you have today. That would always be so helpful. I have a couple things that people have asked over the last week. Anything midwifery or birth related is fair game for the most part. So I thought I'd pull a card quickly for our session today. Since Margot hasn't been doing hers, I don't feel like I'm stealing her card idea any longer. But this is a really fun deck. I'll show it to you. It's a Sedona deck. So this is the cover, the Sedona deck. It's Sedona Oracle deck. And this was essentially a gift from one of my best friends. She actually died a couple of years ago. So while she didn't give me this gift when she was still here, I did receive it after the fact. So it's super special to me. And I keep it here in my office. And I love it because it's so simple. It has some of the local mountains around here, some of the rock formations as cards, and also some of the plant life. So they're super simple. And I'm going to pull one for all of us today. Maybe it'll be meaningful to you. Maybe it'll be meaningful to me. I don't know. Let's see. What do we need to know for this session? Or maybe it's this week. I don't know. We, of course, have a lot going on still with moving. So I don't know what it's going to be. Oh, cool. I have never pulled this one in all of the years, ever. It's the Sun card, joy and healing. So that's a pretty sweetly optimistic card. And I've never seen this one. Didn't even know it lived in this deck. So joy, sunshine, following the light. Let's see if this little booklet has anything else to add to that. It's a very simple book. So there is no other light like the desert sunlight. That is the truth. The clarity of desert light is found few other places. Depending how high in the sky, the sun can be strong enough to burn or gentle enough to warm the soul. Joy, clear vision, warmth, and healing is on the way. Yay, I'll take it. So one more time, if you're joining us, this was the card for today or this week or whatever, the sun. Sweet. Hello, everybody. Thank you for the comments so I know who's here and from where. So nice to see you again. I would love if you would post a question or topic. And if everybody really does that, A, I would be so grateful. And B, I may not get to them all, but that's okay, right? Because I can save them. This is a cute little ring that Dava gave me today. Isn't this cute? They did a fun Easter egg hunt in our yard yesterday. And there was not candy involved in this one anyway. Just lots of fun little toys. So she wanted me to wear this today. And it fits perfectly. Thanks, Dava. Beautiful. All right, let's see what comes up today. People often ask about licensing questions, and if you're not new to this whole world, then you might be bored. I can try and make it more fun somehow. But somebody had asked this last week on the social platform about NARM, which is the North American Registry of Midwives. and how that kind of interfaces with state licensing. So I think that's a great question, and I would love to talk about it for a little bit, especially because with Indie Birth Midwifery School, we get this question a lot, and people are confused. Like, they don't know, can they go that route? Can they go the NARM or CPM route? Should they not? Are they able to? There's just like a lot of confusion. So I thought I would try to add some clarity to that as best as I can. I did release a new podcast 2 weeks ago, or maybe it was just a week ago. I can't remember. And that included some of the fine print behind what it actually means to be a licensed midwife and how messed up I think it actually is. So it was called something like A Rant About Being a Good Little Girl, also known as midwifery licensing. So if you haven't checked that one out and you want to, that might be helpful if you don't quite understand the way that whole thing works, because it's kind of a can of worms. Licensing in many states, at least here in the US, and outside of the US, I don't know a ton, other than midwives are regulated nearly everywhere. So the UK, Australia, Canada, for some of the bigger places, certainly have a similar concept called regulated midwifery or registered midwifery in some of those places. And here in the US, licensed midwifery is sort of the phrase we use, and that differs from state to state. So most states here in the US do have licensing regulations for midwives. There are, of course, a handful of states that do not for various reasons. Some, very few at this point. Is there a choice on paper to be licensed or unlicensed? Minnesota, Utah, Nevada, or actually Nevada doesn't have licensing, but those are some of the places where midwives do openly practice unlicensed, but that's only 3, and there's maybe only a couple more. So over time, the way history has gone, right? So learn from history. The way history has gone is the way of licensing for midwives. Obviously, it didn't start that way. And then over time, states follow other states for whatever political reasons they might have in suddenly wanting to regulate the practice of midwifery. And then it becomes mandatory to have a license. So that podcast I referenced outlines some of the fine print behind licensing, at least in this state here, Arizona. Things like you can't refuse, a midwife can't be party to refusal in a lot of cases. And that's the gist of the podcast. So I'm not going to rehash the whole thing, but it came about as a discussion when people are confused. Women are confused and they say, well, I don't want whatever. I don't want an ultrasound in my pregnancy, but I'm working with a licensed midwife. And, I think people have this optimistic belief that, like, of course you can refuse. I mean, you can refuse anything. That's true. However, the midwife you're working with, if she's licensed, she doesn't have to keep working with you. And if she does, she may be fined or her license may be taken. So just the clarity on that. The woman can refuse whatever, but if she isn't able to prove she's low risk, then the midwife may not work with her, may not be able to work with her, because licensed midwifery works under this medical umbrella of a lot of assumptions about what makes a person appropriate. And they use the term low risk, right? Those are like the same things in that world for home birth. So those are the nuts and bolts of licensing. And if it isn't clear, midwives that are licensed answer to the state they have agreed by signing their name to their midwifery license that they will honor the rules and regulations stated. So that may be a conflict of interest. for the woman, for the family, and even for the midwife. Yeah, hello, everybody. Hello, so many Canadians. Yeah, and this is obviously like a very real thing in Canada. I think we get a fair amount of emails and inquiries from different parts of Canada asking us who is there that is not part of this registered midwife thing. Are there people underground? And, right, there are people all over the world, but not as many and not as openly. So where was I going with that? Okay, so the North American Registry of Midwives is called NARM. I meant to look up some history this morning so that I could be better educated to share with you all, but alas, I did not have the time to do that. So that's on you if you care. Go find out when NARM got started and find out what got that started and why and who. Those would all be great questions to ask because it came from somewhere. Somebody decided that they wanted to create a body of certification. So that's the main difference. And that was the question that was asked this past week. So we have licensing, which is a permission slip from the state, as Carla Hartley used to say. And NARM may or may not play into the actual giving of a license in certain states. And I will share a quick story about that. So when I received a license here in Arizona, the CPM credential was not equal to, and they didn't use it to give the license, if that makes sense. So I went through a whole lot of testing just with the state, was presented with an Arizona state license, and then I had to do additional paperwork and red tape submitting to NARM and then receive back this CPM paper. So at that time, they were not the same. They were different, and you could do one and then you could do the other. But now it's changed, and in a lot of states, obtaining the CPM paper also equals a state license, which is confusing because CPM, NARM is a certification. So those are different. Certification versus licensing, those are two different things. And the way I like to think of it is a license mandates you to this body, this authority called the state board of licensing, whatever that looks like in your state. The certification, although there are certainly problems with certifying midwives, and I could talk about that too, although I do still have the CPM credential as a part of, what I'm doing, and I can talk about that too. It's not something that prohibits me from doing A, B, or C. It doesn't require me to agree to bullshit that I don't believe about birth. And although it does, as I'm saying, function as an equivocal, the same thing as a license in some states, it doesn't have to. So that is confusing. And in some states, like California comes to mind, students there might be told, and I've heard this firsthand, you can't do the PEP process here because you'll have to get a state license first. And that's not true. You can do the PEP process and get the CPM certification in any way that you can. What it means where you live, that is something that changes from state to state. So I don't know if that makes any sense. I'm going to read the comments quick because this is a big thing. Okay, Kathleen, that's an excellent question. And full transparency here, I'm not up on all the details anymore of the PEP process because I was through it a long time ago and they have probably changed it. So I can't speak to the absolute detail, but there's two ways, or maybe more, I think two, right, to obtain this CPM certification. One would be what they call the PEP process, which is kind of like an entry-level process. And, you go through whatever schooling, and essentially you have to get your paperwork signed off by someone who already has the credential and is allowed to sign your papers. So it's kind of like the self-study route, because for so long, right, like that's been midwifery. Even though we have a school, we're not accredited on purpose. So our school isn't one that you can just do and come out the other side a CPM. There are schools like that, and they are called MEAC accredited schools. So Midwifery Education something Council of America. I have no idea actually what that stands for. Anyway, you can Google it. But some schools, give you the CPM credential just because they're accredited. And once you pass through the school, that's what you get. They're also super duper expensive, at least compared to our school, for that reason, because I don't know, I guess you could say it makes it easier. I don't know if it does, but it's a more direct and like understandable route to that goal. So those are the two ways that you could get this piece of paper. I did the PEP process. I did the PEP process many, many years ago, probably 13, 14 years ago at this point, and did it over the course of 4 to 5 years, getting all the papers signed. And I'm not sorry that I did. So I did end up returning my license to the state of Arizona, but I didn't see the need at that point, and I haven't yet since. Not to say the day wouldn't come, but I haven't seen the need yet to cancel my CPM certification. I don't feel like it does me any harm per se. And, I guess the benefits are that I am sort of forced to do CEU stuff, which I don't really need that push, but I kind of enjoy it. One thing I've always just not known at this point in my life is whether or not I will want to practice out of this country somewhere else in some clinic. And while the CPM credential certainly isn't the most impressive of, any credentials, it's very entry level, so it's not like an MD or anything crazy like that. It might be useful to me at some point in my future. So, I gave the license back, but I did have to reflect on what this CPM certification meant and if it was something I wanted. And I'm still feeling like it's fine. If I hadn't done it, then I wouldn't do it now, but I did do it. So I'm keeping it for the moment. And if it ever became a matter of them, meaning NARM, really telling someone how to practice, really, setting protocol for you or any kind of rules, then I would be out. I would be out 100% immediately. But in full disclosure, I'm not a fan of the fact that it has become a method for licensing. So I guess it's a question of throwing the whole thing, throwing the baby out with the bathwater kind of thing, picking and choosing, or, is this all bad? Is it all a bad idea? And I think that's a very valid viewpoint to have about it, that it's all bad perhaps because it has identified good midwives versus whatever you want to call everybody else. And that, of course, is not something I believe. Margot does not hold the CPM credential on purpose. And many of my loved friends and, midwives that have been in my life don't. And I have no judgment about that. I don't, like I said, if I didn't already have it, I wouldn't go get it at this point. But I don't have a great reason for giving it up, although I've thought about it. So never say never. The renewal comes every 2 or 3 years. So I don't know. I really don't know. But I definitely don't think it's necessary to be a CPM, to be a legitimate midwife. I don't think that is the goal. I think if people are interested in obtaining that for their own development, their own knowledge, having a structure for that can feel really good. I, of course, think our school has an excellent structure, But if you're looking at more structure for apprenticeship and like checking boxes for skills, and we do need skills, then I think it's a nice framework to have, perhaps. So that's my blab about the CPM credential, about how they differ in different places. And so to sum it all up, you could pursue the CPM credential really anywhere for whatever reasons you have. It may or may not mean anything in your state. You may or may not want it to mean anything. That's how I feel. And so with students in our school, just to have another place to talk about this, we don't care what you do. So yes, we are in favor of choice for midwives. We're in favor of choice for women. I don't necessarily think that licensed midwifery should die or will ever die. I think it's a legitimate choice and structure for many people that feel the way they do. And so I do, advocate for people practicing however they want. And for that reason, the school doesn't enforce, we don't make people do anything. I mean, the whole principle is autonomy for all of us. Like, do what works for you, whatever makes you feel free. Although we're totally there, and I have talked for endless hours on podcasts and all of that about choosing differently for conscious reasons and facing the fears and issues that come up when we don't follow the well-beaten path to midwifery. When we go off of that, when we choose a non-accredited school, I'm all for it. But our school, as it stands alone, we certainly have had students that have been through the school. And no, we do not have any affiliation with anybody else, so we can't hand them a NARM certificate. But we know that having been through the 2 years of our very rigorous program, that they are more than equipped to sit for the NARM exam, should they choose. And that's always the question, can I sit for the exam? Sure. I mean, do what you got to do to get to that point, but you will learn way more than you need to sit for and pass that exam. And unless that has changed majorly in, the years since I was sitting there, that's totally true and doable. It's a multiple choice test. I don't really remember it too well, to be honest, but I certainly passed. I very much more than passed. And you will too if you study in whatever way, self-study totally is an option. Our school, I think, is obviously great for providing structure and accountability around that, because self-study can get, very out there for some and, work really awesome for others. So I don't know. I don't know that I planned that one either. I'm all about blabbing without planning lately. We have so much other stuff going on that, I don't know. I'm not the most prepared for things lately, but there's plenty of things to talk about. Let's see what Danielle said. Yeah, so being risked out, have to use the air quotes all the time when we talk about licensing, is sad. And yes, Danielle, I agree. What's sadder is that a woman would be blindsided by that. That's the saddest part. So again, free choice. We should have free choice. And if someone wants a licensed midwife, then they should totally have one. However, most women, and I wish I could put a percentage to it, at least here. I could try. I would say at least 75% of women choosing licensed midwifery, to my knowledge here, have no idea what they're signing up for. They have no idea. And it's all just roses and unicorns, and they're going to have a home birth, they're going to have a water birth. And you know what? If they've had babies before, that's probably how it'll look. I mean, unless something comes up like dates. But if it's a first baby, it's pretty rare in these parts that it all works out picture perfect the way people think in that model. because there are just too many regulations. And first-time moms blow a lot of them out of the water just by being normal, healthy women with normal, healthy babies having their first baby. They will go past a date that's not acceptable. Their labor, their birth process is very likely to fall outside of the rules and regulations around how long a midwife is allowed to be, at a labor. Pushing, she may push longer than she's allowed to. So there's a million ways that first babies don't happen at home or in a birth center in the ways that people think they will because they had no idea. So I've talked a lot about our free workshop here on this event because that is my way here in my community. And I don't know where I'll end up. Maybe I'll have a new community to teach. That would be fun. And meet, not just teach, but meet and learn from. But that is my contribution to my community, is a free workshop where I am willing to spend 3 hours every couple months and teach people. And I do think there is the teaching aspect there. When they don't know, teach them about their choices. Because you can't choose if you don't know your options. I mean, you can, but is that really choice? Is that really informed choice, right? It's not. It's only having part of the picture. And this is a really huge decision that people make with only part of the picture. I mean, think how much more research people put into choosing a wedding photographer, choosing a wedding venue. My daughter works in weddings. She's a photographer. And man, that's an industry. People have no problem spending money on one day. So yeah, priorities get a little out of whack, I think, in our society. People have to want to know. And that's the other thing. Like, here I am offering this free workshop. It's really fun. And I do think it's had an impact, especially over the 5 or 6 years. But still, people have to want to know. And I could tell you every single time we do it, there are people that are super grateful to know. And here's the interesting part. Most of the time, those people are not pregnant. So I don't know, maybe when you're pregnant and you find this out, you just like can't handle the truth or something. I think there definitely is an element of that. But usually the people that are the most grateful and the most receptive and the most like, oh my God, like this is really the way it works, they're not pregnant. They're either, before pregnancy, or maybe they're in between. Maybe they're just younger altogether and they're just like interested in midwifery or becoming a doula. So that feels really awesome too. Why not get to people, so to speak, before they even go into pregnancy? But often the pregnant women that come, when met with what I think is the truth, like this is the truth of the way it works. Do what you want, but there is at least an element of truth to like making this choice. Yeah, a lot of them, they don't make changes, so that's okay. Maybe they're not ready. Maybe they have lots of good reasons and their own story as to why that is. And that's their choice. And of course, there's always the percentage of people that come and they're like, oh my God, I am pregnant and I was going to do this. And now I'm going to rethink that. And of course, that feels super good. So I think when you are up on these concepts, that you are, I think, obligated to a certain extent to share what you know. And, I hear this from birth workers, from doulas, from student midwives. It's like, oh, I don't want to rock the boat in my community. Am I going to be the one to tell the truth? Like, I don't know if I want to teach that workshop. Up to you. But I think there's a way it can be done that it's not personal. And I say that all the time. It's not personal. Midwives usually are very loving women that came into this work because they love this whole thing. They love pregnancy. They love babies. But it doesn't mean you have to agree to what they've agreed to. You have to understand these bigger structures and the bigger system, and then choose honestly for yourself. So yeah, you might rock the boat in your community, but I've had licensed midwives come. I've had CNMs come. my dear friend Nina. I don't know that she watches these, but she's a CNM in California. And I mean, I don't think anyone left feeling badly. It's just, this is the way it works. And women can choose what they want. And I think if you are a midwife that's practicing more in the system, I have total respect for you too. And I think it's just a matter of transparency. It's just honesty. It's just like, hey, this is the way I work. I'm not ashamed of it. This is how I want to work. And just so you know, I have kind of these regulations. I have rules that I need to adhere to keep my license. It's important to me to keep my license. So I want you to know right off the bat that 40 weeks, 41 weeks, blah, blah, blah. Just be honest. That's all. Yeah, rock the boat, Danielle. Go for it. You can rock the boat in the most loving way. This isn't personal. Right? We talked about the 4 agreements last week. I've been reading it all week. I don't know. We should have a book club. I needed to reread it. And that one agreement about not taking it personally is something that I'm always trying to work on. So, it's not personal. People are going to feel the way they want to feel based on, as he says in the book, their own dream, their own reality, essentially, right? So this is my reality. I've lived it to a very high degree, and I've made my choices accordingly to suit my own truth. That's all. It's not about anyone else. Yeah, totally. So let's just be honest. It's not villainizing licensed midwifery because you know what? It's not going away. It's not going away anytime soon. So let's just be honest. And my highest hope, and this has happened to a limited degree here, is that we can all work together. I've totally sent people over to the licensed midwives here, totally, because they have easier access to specific lab work. And, there's reasons to help each other. So I don't know that I've gotten people from them, but that's okay. I've totally sent people that way. And I think that would be ideal if we could work together and be honest about our limitations, because I have limitations too. Yeah, the talk of transport, I think that is a whole other topic. I think there's definitely transparency around that needs to be had. And I don't know either, right? Like, I would be making assumptions. Is that not the 3rd agreement? I don't want to make assumptions about what licensed midwives tell prospective clients. I don't really know. My hunch is that maybe there's not as much honesty around the transport rate, but there could be. And there could be women that are like, hey, I'm fine with that. You got a 40%, 50% transfer rate. That's fine with me because whatever, it feels good to them. So. Oh, cool. The 5th agreement. Did I miss that one? I did read his other companion book this week. So I reread the 4 agreements and I read the companion book that has some actual exercises in there. I do have the Mastery of Love, which is one of his other ones. But yeah, I'm going to reread the 4 agreements. Again, I feel like that's just something that every time I read it, I pick up more stuff from, and just setting the intention, that's been, lately, especially I intend to honor the 4 agreements and just see how they come in and see how I'm reacting to people. And yeah, so anyway, book club maybe. I don't remember your question, Sarah. So please submit it again. That would be lovely. Oh, cool. Okay, I'll have to check out the 5th agreement. See? That's amazing. I needed to hear that today. Thank you. Yeah, I'm not attending births right now for a couple of reasons. What came in first, so just the timeline here, what came in first was Rumi was born, and that blew me apart, seriously. Not literally, figuratively. I am not the same person. I'm not the same person that I was before his birth. I really think a new reality got created in my life, my world. And so it's just felt different. I don't know how else to say it. So this moving, this upheaval we're feeling is part of that, this creation of a new reality. I'm not sure where that will be, what that will look like, but I know that's part of it, is just because we're not the same. Jason and I both are not the same people. So that makes me feel better in a sense. It's not just moving, it's like actual something big, some big changes coming. And so as a part of that, when he was very tiny, I attended a couple of births, and it was hard, and I just felt done. And not forever, but I felt very clear that I wanted to be with him and him only. And I don't have regrets about not doing that with my other children, but I didn't do it that way. By the time they were 1 month or 2 months, I was back to attending births. They were coming with me, so I've never left anyone early. I didn't feel good about that, but I just kind of went on. And before all of those babies were born, I remember consciously thinking, birth changes you. You totally become a different person on the other side. And I would always say to myself, like, I don't know who I'll be after this. Like, maybe I won't want to attend births anymore. That never happened. And this time it kind of did happen. Although I watched a birth video today of a dear friend, and I totally cried. And I was like, okay, I'm not done. I'm not done doing this. Like, I know I'm not, but I've needed a break. And breaks are good, breaks are good. So I made a conscious point of not attending births this whole winter. I did not want to drag Rumi around like that. I did not want to. And those of you that are on call, you'll understand what I mean. Like, I just didn't want to do that. And I didn't want to drag him out of bed in the freezing cold, even though it's not that cold here. Just that whole thing. I just didn't want to do that to him. And so the universe listened. I really wasn't sent to anyone. I turned down a couple of people, but I really, didn't have people banging down the door or anything. The universe totally listened to me and probably felt that I needed a break. And you know what? It's been so great. Like, I've taken really good care of myself. I'm able to work out regularly. I'm able to meditate regularly. Like, I'm solid right now in my self-care routine and my own growth process. And I needed that time, because every time the phone rings, you're off, you're off in a different direction. And while that is great, in some ways, it's just not what I needed right now. So that happened. And then this whole moving thing got activated. And I feel like people might be a little tired of me talking about it, but it's not just that. It's not just the moving. It's the creation of this new thing. And so the reality of not knowing where I'll be in come July, come August, means that I haven't even been able to accept clients here. So it's been kind of perfect, because, I'm not gonna do that. Although I do have one lovely woman this summer, and we'll work it out one way or another. And she's just the perfect person, for me to be walking with right now, because I'm not quite sure where I'll be. And so, yeah, the universe has set it up perfectly for me that I'm not attending births right now. And there's nothing I could do about it, unless someone was due tomorrow or next week. I'm sort of just off the radar right now. I don't have a calendar for that, and it feels really good. So I've been doing lots of virtual prenatals, which I've been really enjoying. And I'm very sure that I will be back to attending births when the time is right. And it might be as soon as this fall, and it might not be, for 6 months after that. I have no idea. And also, if this retreat center comes to fruition sooner, then I don't know, maybe I would just transition into doing that, or getting it ready, or both, So I'm really not sure. The universe is wide open right now for me. And there are moments of panic, I won't lie, but ultimately I know it's fine. And I'm really excited to see what the next adventure is. Yeah, that would be awesome if you could send it. And I'm sorry, I forgot. I just, obviously these chats just kind of roll by. Yeah, I think so. I think we are transformed after birth karmically and physically and emotionally and on every level. And I didn't expect it, which sounds silly because like why would I have and why wouldn't I have? Like why? 10th baby, maybe you'd think like, oh, it's just going to be the same as last time. And it really, really wasn't. The pregnancy was different, and everybody knows his birth story. His birth was different. He is different. And so I really do look down on him with a whole lot of admiration and love. And, I've not been joking, but lately have just been looking down at his little face and saying, where are we going, Rumi? Like, what's next, buddy? Because it seems like he's, leading the herd, so to speak. I don't feel like I really have any control over this process of relocation. We are going to go wherever we get sent. And it feels like he knows, feels like he knows and is directing that. But I don't know. I don't know what it is. So yeah, totally different. And it's given me so much compassion for, I mean, just all of it, like all that we do as women, specifically, birth and mothering, that there is this unknown, even when we've done it before, and it is magical and terrifying, as the comments say. Yes, both of those things. And I guess the positive way of saying it is, my depth of understanding and experience increased so much with his birth. So I kind of felt like I had experienced a lot of things in a sense. I know how to birth a baby and I've seen lots of births, but I knew nothing. I knew nothing at all. And I probably still know nothing, but there's this piece that just like wasn't in my awareness about the spirituality of the experience and the actual, well, it's not actual, I guess it's like the metaphorical death that we experience. I have never experienced it to that degree before, that I don't even know who I was 5 months ago. Like, that's how profound this has been. And relationships feel like they have changed, and my whole like relationship to pretty much everything has changed. Even midwifery work, which was the original question. I think I said on a podcast, I have a lot less desire to be super involved in the physical process past, feeling bellies and all of that. Like, sure, I love that. But, a client the other day, a past client, I've been with her a couple of times, had some physical stuff going on and wanted to send me some photos and wanted input. And I'm available to her and she knows that, but I said, I think you should go get that looked at. The licensed midwives are great for that. Like, get a diagnosis, and then I'm here, if you want support. And I know she has a lot going on. So if she wanted to explore the emotional undertones and what's going on for her, then I would love to be that person. But I was just like so not interested in the clinical aspect at that moment. And that might change too, it's like it might come back in and I might really feel that. But I think there's a piece of me that feels like this journey for me is going in that other direction, that yes, I can keep the knowledge and I will love to keep learning that stuff, but I'm less that person. I'm less like the physical midwife, and more, support from anywhere, which is what I've been doing. So it is fantastic what birth can do to us. And I mean that in the most like powerful way. It wasn't something done to me. It was my full participation, and I wouldn't have it any other way, but I never could have anticipated the changes that would have come as a result of that experience, that whole story. Yeah. So that's the monologue for today. It's totally changed my life, and it's set our whole family, I believe, on a new path of something. So once I have clarity on exactly what that something is, I will be so happy to share it with people, because I will also be so relieved. I won't lie. I'll be so relieved to know what that's going to look like, and and what I'm being asked to do. I do feel like we're all here for a purpose. And up to this point, yeah, I feel like my purpose has been what it has been, attending births and, being a midwife in this way that is very well understood. And I still love that whole idea. And I love that, we are trying to help people create that path for themselves. But I feel like now there's, this new path. And that midwife isn't going to look the way it's looked for me up till this point. But that's also really exciting, right? Like, I don't know that I was ever someone that had aspirations of getting burnt out as a midwife and attending, 15 births a month. And it's just, that's never been what I wanted. And my body doesn't want that. And my family doesn't want that. So I feel like this makes even more sense. But I hope I do, of course, get to witness more births in the future. Even just selfishly, watching this video was just a reminder of why I do love it and why it's so powerful and why I do believe in midwifery so much. And something I want to talk about in the future, not today, because I'm running out of time. And I also want to talk about it on a podcast with a friend of mine, is this idea of the community midwife and what that means anymore. Like, I don't know that I know because, I've been here a long time. And the longer I'm here lately, sort of the less need there seems to be for a community midwife, which also might be why we're moving on. Lots of free births, which is fine. But, sort of the archetype of this role that many of us hold or many of us would like to hold is profound in a community sense, or I think should be, which is why I do this work, So it's not about me personally, like the ego being like needed as a midwife. It's the archetype of a midwife in a community and how she serves life and death and families and, all of this stuff we like to imagine. So that's something we'll put out there soon once we record it. But that's feeling especially poignant to me lately with being in between and just wondering, what do communities want? And are we at a point in time where communities just, I don't know how to phrase it. Like either they don't want it or they don't value it. I don't know. But I definitely think that's something that's come in as part of my entire picture lately and decision-making process. And I think a lot has to do with the world. I think people are grappling at their freedom. And birth is a great example of freedom, of either having it inside or thinking you need it on the outside. And that also plays into the licensing discussion. It plays into free birth. It plays into a lot of, concepts that people really want to claim right now because they're so desperate to be free. So that's my mini monologue on that. But stay tuned for a podcast in the next couple of weeks about that. I'm going to do it with my friend here, and I'm super excited to have her insight as a smart, powerful woman and somebody in the community. Yeah, and I believe you, Kathleen, and that's so uplifting. And I guess, just personally, that's what I'm soul searching right now. Because I've shared, it doesn't really feel like this community is necessarily requesting that anymore, or maybe it's just me, totally could be. But I know there are communities all over that would really value the presence of an autonomous midwife. And so, it's a balance between, yes, we're going to go where we're led and where we want to go, but also it would be great to impact another community in a way that feels really valuable. Because again, I think this archetype is important to keep alive. All right, friends, this always is about 50 minutes. I hope that is good with you all. I'm going to get home to my little roomie before I continue on the virtual prenatal path today. But it was so nice meeting with all of you and conversing as best we can. It's a really nice connection. And even though I never know what's going to come out, it feels like there are always things that there's a good time to say. Have a wonderful week, everybody, and I'll see you back here next week.